Well, whilst at Maxwell Clark, then I became educated into the world of really of New York American advertising, because British advertising, London advertising agencies, and the advertising that had gone before for the last 20 or 30 years hadn't really changed very much. Big agencies like Mather and Crowther, as Ogilvy's was then called, S.H. Benson, these places had been going for a long time, and they were very stodgy, and they were doing very mostly poor work, really, which all you can remember are, it was all illustration. There was no real humour, just silly middle class stuff, which was of no interest to anyone. But then we were then all of our education came from New York, really. I mean, when New Yorker magazine came out, every week we would desperately get a copy of it to see the ads, and we were really influenced by agencies like Dordain Bernbach, Jack Tinker, Scully McCabe, all the American agencies, Wells Rich Green. Those really were, I suppose, the kind of advertising that we influenced us the most. And also, whilst working at Maxwell Clark, an interesting phenomenon occurred in so much as the two very hotshot agencies, Dordain and Bernbach and Papert Koenig Lois, both opened in London. And so everybody was desperate to try and get a job there. And I went for the junior copyrighted job at Dordain Bernbach, and I didn't get it. And then I went for the junior copyrighted job at PKL, and did get it. And fortunately, the copy chief who hired me was Peter Mayle, who was quite incredibly helpful to me, really. I was about to get married, I always remember. He said to me, "How much do you want?" And at the time, I was earning £11 a week. And I said, "Well, I'm getting married, so I'm going to need at least 13, meaning £13 a week." And then he said, "Well, I'm going to need 13. So he said, "Well, the job pays 15. And so I said yes, and he gave me the job. And then my first pay packet was £1,500 a year, which was £30 a week, which was double what I was expecting to get. So I remember saying to my father-in-law, "Shall I tell anyone?" And he said, "No, don't tell anyone." But I was really quite lucky, and mostly because of Peter. As I say, I had like a suitcase full of stuff, ads, because I'd done so much at Maxwell Clark. And I think that he was probably more impressed by the quantity than the quality. But anyway, I got hired, and there I was at PKL. Well, I joined PKL, and I was very excited because, PKL had a fantastically hot reputation for being, really creative and doing really interesting things. Started by Julian Koenig and George Lois, two of the greatest creative people ever in the world of advertising. And you just thought it was going to be the same. And they did for about 6 months or so, they did some quite good work. And then they sent over this bloke called Joe Sacco, who was, I don't know where he was from. He was from like H.E. Bates or somewhere. And he was horrendous. He hated creative advertising. And I think Peter Mayle was in shock because he was a senior writer. And I used to hate it, really. We used to have meetings until midnight, where all the creative department, 20 people in the same room, trying to come up with ideas and throwing out ideas. And it was dreadful, absolutely awful. It was nothing like the agency that I thought it was going to be. And I was really lucky because at the agency was Paul Windsor, who was an art director, who had previously worked for CDP. And he was as much in shock as anyone, but how dreadful this thing was with Sacco. Paul said to me, CDP would like me to come back, but, everyone is now working as teams. It was a new fashion. Instead of working the whole creative department on one floor and the whole copywriters all on another floor, everybody was working in creative groups, creative teams, art directors working as teams with pairs, really, with writers. And he said, would you like to come to CDP with me as a writer? And I said, yeah, I would like a shot, And then Peter Mayle, who was very encouraging for me to leave PKL. We went for our interview at CDP with the creative director, Colin Millward, and we came back to PKL, and Peter Mayle was downstairs in Sloane Street, where the agency was, And he was walking up and down saying, and he was waiting for us. He said, "Don't go back in. Sacco's found out you've gone for an interview at CDP." And I think because Peter probably told him. And he said he's thrown his coffee at the wall and he's gone berserk. And we're worried because it did have a history of some for violence, PKL. So Peter Mau said, I said, "What should we do?" He said, "Well, just go home." So we went home. And then we never went back, which was weird. We just joined CDP as soon as we could. What happened was that it was such an obvious mistake, and I think that the powers that be in New York, Koenig and Lois, realised that it was a mistake. He went back to New York, and then PKL was then bought out by Peter Mayle and Nigel Seeley, and then sold on to BBDO, and so it ceased to exist in this country, really. I think Sacco killed it stone dead.